The Unmarked by Matt Fleagle. Chapter 6. Of Curses. Finally, the warden and the animal council, except for the pacing wolf, crossed the courtyard again to take their places at a long table near the entrance to the purple tent. The warden stood with some effort from his chair at the center of the table. His hair was gray and untidy, but his muddy green eyes beamed a mysterious authority that snared the attention of everyone present, right down to the restless hedgehog presently leaning against Kaleb's feet. "Now to business, my good subjects," he said. "First, I would like to welcome our guests of honor, Glista," he said, turning toward her with a warm look. "My dear, you have risked much on behalf of this grateful company to bring Kaleb safely here." Glista nodded, reciprocating the warden's warm look. "And Kaleb, of the Dellbloods, I am sorry to take you away from your post by your people's sacred tree, but you are needed here in Terrashine more urgently." The old man smiled with a strange playfulness in his eyes as he added, "Indeed, I have waited many years to meet you face to face again." "What do you mean again?" Kaleb said. Glista and the other creatures gazed back and forth from Kaleb to the warden, echoing Kaleb's question in their own minds. "Ah, yes," said the warden. "Now you wouldn't remember that, would you? You must pardon me, for I have lived a long time, and sometimes the long years begin to run together in my memory. Now, of course, you wouldn't remember, for you were just a tiny boy then, not more than a few months old. I am speaking of the night when your mother and your father laid you under the very tree you were watching over this evening." "You speak of my marking?" said Kaleb through a choked voice. "Yes," said the warden. "I speak of the only night that seems to matter in the lives of your people, the night of your marking. Or, as it turned out in your case, an unmarking. You were a sad sight, if I could be honest, swaddled up tightly and left there all alone at the foot of that silly tree." Kaleb glanced around at the curious faces of the small animals, all staring at him with a variation of the same questioning look. Glista, too, stared at Kaleb out of her stony black eyes. "What do you know of that night?" said Kaleb shortly. "And how can you speak so lightly of it? It may not matter to you, but it is a night I will curse until I die." Kaleb couldn't conceal the razor's edge in his voice. "What I know," said the warden, softly, "and all that matters to us here and now is that on that night you were chosen for a special purpose, a purpose the forest spirit himself selected you for." Kaleb swallowed hard. Then he shook his head. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, sir, but I know now that you have me confused with someone else. I remember nothing of you, nor do I know anything of these beasts around me. I have no skill nor experience but cutting timber for my people." The warden went on staring at Kaleb thoughtfully, but said nothing. "It is clear," Kaleb went on, "that you do not understand the traditions of Glenwood Village. Don't you know that I, Kaleb, was spared the sign of blessing given to the Dellbloods?" Here he pointed his shaking finger at the smooth place on his forehead where the Dellblood mark would be. "I am cursed by the forest spirit. I have no mark to show that I belong among my people. The only one of my generation, too. I go to no banquets. I have heard no stories from the elders since my childhood days. I will never be permitted to take a wife or raise children. I have nothing to look forward to but shame and hard labor. I will sweat under the tilbury trees until the day my body gives out." Though Kaleb suspected none of the animals would understand his unique plight as an unmarked, exiled Dellblood, he labored to explain it to them anyway. Meanwhile, the warden only gazed at Kaleb in silence, a tranquil look playing in his green eyes. Kaleb's face reddened suddenly as he paused to catch his breath. He glanced around the assembly, and the warm welcome he had just received came back to mind. The despair in his voice must have affected the creatures, for all the animals crowding the table drew in their breath sharply, as if holding it in anticipation of a battle, moments before the first arrow flew. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I'm afraid I don't know the manners of being a guest." The animals seemed to let out their breath a little. With brittle steps, the old man made his way around the head table, and then took a few more slow strides toward Kaleb's table. With each step, the warden leaned on his gnarled cane for balance. Kaleb stood, thinking that the man might require assistance to walk, but the warden smiled and waved his hand to decline the help. Finally, still propped up on his cane, the warden stood in front of Kaleb. The log splitter noticed the old man's muddy green eyes were now moist with tears. Kaleb once again felt very ashamed of his angry tone. He glanced down apologetically at the hedgehogs and simbines. "Warden, I must confess that I am not good with words or with people. I have no friends nor a family to converse with. No one speaks to me where I come from. If my tone was out of place, I beg that you will forgive me." The warden shook his head. "Not to worry, my young friend," he said, so softly that it suddenly felt to Kaleb as if only he and the old man were standing alone in the courtyard. "Much of what you have said is true. To your people, that little scar on your brow means blessing, and to be without it seems a very great curse. And yet, to belong to such confused people, those who would cast out one of their own, though he had done no wrong and earned no disgrace, that is indeed a greater curse, wouldn't you agree?" "The mark of the Dellbloods is not a curse, Warden. It is a sign of blessing," Kaleb said. "Without it, I am nothing. I have grown up alone, worked to the bone every day, and scorned by my people whenever I show my face in the village. How could you, an outsider from these woods, understand my people's mark?" "I should understand it quite well, Kaleb, for it was I who withheld your people's curse from you on that fateful night." Kaleb stared at the old man with wonder. A faint chatter erupted from among the circle of small animals at Kaleb's feet, and then quickly died down. The young man cleared his throat. "What do you mean?" The old man straightened up, shifting his weight from off the cane. "I made sure you received no mark as an infant lying at the base of that sacred tree," he said. "And I know that without that mark, and under this curse you speak of, you've grown stronger cutting timber than all the other men in your village." Here the old man lifted his gnarled cane and tapped Kaleb's broad shoulders with the end of it. The small animals in the circle peered up at Kaleb's broad arms and neck. The splitting of logs, as they could now see, had made Kaleb a physically powerful man. "Because you are unmarked," the warden continued, "you, Kaleb, have a thirst for adventure, the very thirst that brought you here tonight. Think about it. Would another man in your village follow a stone render into dark, untraveled woods to visit an animal council? "But if you indeed kept me from the sacred marking," Kaleb stammered, "then you also forced me into exile. With that mark, I would have had a life in the village. I could have buried my father. I could have had a family and a real future." "You have not forfeited your future, child," the warden said with a glint in his eye. "You have only traded the ordinary kind of future for an extraordinary one." "We are wasting our time," interrupted the black wolf at this very moment. From out of the wolf's long jaws came a rich and commanding female voice. "He is clearly not the one you foretold, Fallwrinkle. This man knows nothing of the mission assigned to our rescuer." As she said this, the wolf circled the table where Kaleb sat. "This man is angry," she growled, looking squarely up at Kaleb. and he knows nothing of destiny or magic or of the danger humans have brought upon our kind." The warden turned toward the wolf. "Would I lie to you, dear Teva?" he said. "Would I not recognize the man the forest spirit had chosen?" The wolf bared her teeth a little more, but said nothing else. "I find myself agreeing with that creature, Warden," said Kaleb. "I am deeply honored by your welcome, but I see no point to my being here. You have summoned the wrong man." At that moment, Glista stood up from her table close by. "Kaleb, please listen to him. I know you have not known these creatures long, but you must trust the warden. If it were not for his protection, I would have been killed weeks ago, struck down by the stone renders, who, as I now know, were plotting to kill me. The warden warned me of their plans in a dream, and though I had never seen him before, I traveled here to meet him. He spoke truth, and I have no reason to believe that he is mistaken now. It was he who sent me into your village to find you and to bring you back here. Told me exactly how to find you and where, and now he is trying to save your people." "Save my people? But from whom?" Kaleb said. "The Dellbloods have no enemies for hundreds of miles in any direction." "He must save them," she said quietly, "from my people." At this, Kaleb's eyes grew wide. Glista sighed. "Though I knew nothing of it until the warden called me here," Glista said. "He has revealed to me, and my tracking of their spies has since confirmed it, that the Stone Runners plan to overrun your village in less than a week." A whimper from one of the young coyotes startled 3 of the hedgehogs surrounding it. "But why?" said Kaleb, his face pale. "Because your people have something they desperately want. Something that could make the Stone Runners the most powerful civilization in all the lands throughout Parison." "You must have confused the Dellbloods with some other race," said Kaleb, shaking his head at Glista. "We have nothing your people could want, save vegetables and grain. We are a humble village with no gold, armor, or weaponry to speak of. My people, the few who train to fight at all, battle with clubs, not swords or poison-tipped spears. What is there in Glenwood Village to stir your people to envy?" Glista hesitated and turned back to the warden, as though she expected him to explain. But before the warden could answer, one of the bears from the head table bellowed, "The Renders want a branch from your magic tree, Dellblood. That's how they are planning to destroy your people and enslave every last one of us, and now they have it."